You left this with Ferrara, I believe.
How's the arm, sir?
What? Oh, it's fine. It'll get better. All pretty shocking for someone unused to field work. So, 007. Lots to be done. Are you ready to get back to work?
With pleasure, M. With pleasure.
All right, welcome back to James Bond Aficionado. Today's guest is none other than being James Bond head of section, Joe Darlington. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I know it was a surprise for most people, and they were wondering who I'm doing it with because I didn't announce who it was going to be with. I don't know if you caught that little Instagram little snippet I did, but I didn't reveal who it was. So you are the big secret. So thank you, Joe, once again.
I hope people are not too disappointed, but thank you.
Well, I hope not either. So, Joe, we all know that you're the author of Being James Bond. Give me a little bit of a background on Being James Bond for the readers that have not read your book, and a little bit about your intro into the James Bond universe, I should say.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I grew up like every young man, a fan of action movies, science fiction, that sort of stuff. And as I got older and, started to become a young adult, I found that a lot of the others were sort of falling to the wayside, and James Bond seemed to be the one that I was gravitating towards more and more. The first one I saw on TV was For Your Eyes Only, although I'm pretty sure I've seen others in my peripheral before that. And the first one I saw on the big screen was Octopussy, and I was hooked ever since. And I kind of found as I was getting older, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, I kind of becoming a more kind of a hardcore fan where, it wasn't just a casual thing anymore. If I had job interviews coming up and I had to go buy myself a suit, I'd pop on GoldenEye and just look at what Brosnan was wearing and just try to imitate that the best I could. And I found myself gravitating more towards the activities that Bond would do. Like if Bond was, if he played poker, if he was playing golf, if he was skiing, it was like that was sort of all the incentive I needed to, try these things, learn them for myself. And I remember having, sort of a theory, and I would, hear this in other places as well, that, one of the things about James Bond that is so amazing is that he seems to just know how to do everything. Anything you put in front of this guy, he can sit down and do it in a masterful way, whether it's gambling, something like it could even be backgammon. He knows how to play it. He knows how to do it. Activity, sports like golf, skiing, scuba diving, and even extreme sports. And it almost got to be kind of parody where there was just nothing this guy can't do. And I guess the question I had, well, is it that far-fetched? Or could somebody who really sort of took the interest and dedicated themselves into learning these things, is it reasonably possible? I mean, I don't think a person is going to be the master at everything they do, but could they at least learn them well enough to, be able to interact intelligently with it? And that's more or less how Being James Bond was born. I just decided, let's kind of explore this idea and let's really kind of get into the nitty gritty of everything Bond does. And, is it possible to learn these things? So that's it. And this was around the time when podcasting was becoming a thing, and I had a friend who was already doing one, and I said, what is this whole podcasting thing? And he kind of introduced me to it, and I thought, what a great medium to start, exploring those things. So that's really how it came to be. And I actually did, I always conceived it as a book. The idea of writing this book was daunting, and I said to myself, what if I write it and I don't know what to do with it? Like I can't do anything with it. That's how I sort of segued into doing a podcast. So that's kind of how it all started. And I'll take a breath now.
Yeah, and it's quite surprising how much the I should say evolution of vlogging, podcasting has came over the years. Because if I remember correctly, your book came out late 2000s, and it wasn't that popular. And now it's like one of those things. Everybody wants to be on YouTube. Everybody wants to do a podcast. It doesn't matter what it's about. It's just standard radio stations now. Like NPR has their own, the list goes on. So can you give us a little bit of, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a great medium because it's, radio, like television, I mean, there's a schedule. My show starts at a certain time. It ends at a certain time. So if you happen to be there, great. If you missed it, tough noogies. I'm kind of going back even before like VCRs and stuff, but radio is still the same way. Like if you have a radio show you like, well, that's my morning commute. But a podcast you can play anytime you want. Like as soon as I get in the car, I pull up my favorite podcast, and who's ever got a new episode, I'll listen to it. So it is great, and you can kind of keep them forever. I kind of like looking back at my playlist of episodes sometimes and just feeling like, anybody at any time has this kind of library of stuff that they want to just pop on and listen to that they could. So yeah, and plus it's so, I mean, it's really weird, and this sort of drives my girlfriend crazy. I really don't watch any TV anymore. I watch YouTube. I literally watch YouTube on my TV like I'm watching TV, because I'm watching stuff that I have a personal connection to, and it's usually not so much like watching a TV show about something it's a nice big polished thing that will appeal to a lot of people. But a podcast is probably done by, one of my peers, someone who is sort of at my level of fandom, I suppose. And and we're kind of talking about the same thing, taking an interest in the same thing. So the connection is much better. I kind of feel like there's much more, and this goes for YouTube videos too. I mean, I've been watching Calvin Dyson doing James Bond reviews for, since he was a youngin.
I know. You look back to his My Weekly Bond segments, it's like, look how young Calvin looks, and he's still going at it super strong, and he has that spunk to him still, and it's like
he really does. Yeah. I mean, it's great. He's I'm a full blown fan, big fan of Calvin's, and yeah, I literally was just, I can't remember if it was, I guess it was yesterday. I was watching something on YouTube, and then his review of Die Another Day from way back when came on next, and I was like, boy, I mean, he looks like he's 12 in this. So again, I feel like he's somebody I know very well. It's almost like, back in the days, they would say like, Johnny Carson or, hosting a late show felt like part of the family because they were in your living room every night. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like I've been watching Calvin for that long. So it's like, Well,
I say the same thing about you and David, because I've been watching you guys for years now, and especially David since the Frugal Bond, and then of course your podcast. It feels like I've been listening to you since you first started, since Casino Royale dropped. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like now I see you guys doing live streams. It's like, oh, I gotta chime in and say hello, how's it going? Yeah. And then it come to find out, it's like, you know what, I need to quit from hiding behind the shade, and I'm going to hop into this universe. I enjoy James Bond so much, and I know I need to weigh my opinion, because everybody's opinion is so different when it comes to James Bond. So,
yeah, no, very true. And props for doing it, because, again, I always encourage the new generation to jump in, because, I always say jump in, the water's fine. I mean, it's a great way to jump into a larger conversation, really. So props.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. So before I started cutting you out, can you give us a little teaser of Volume 2 of Being James Bond?
I can. Yeah, it follows, I'll tell you a secret. This is sort of funny. I think one of the reasons why Volume 2 has taken so long is that I have struggled and struggled and struggled with the cover, which sounds ridiculous. But when I did the first one, I kind of envisioned, 8 volumes, and I thought it would all look very similar. And I even designed it so that the spine, when you put all of them together, would have the tux, with the bow tie. And, I kind of struggled with, but if I put out volume 2 and the cover looks exactly the same, how's anybody even going to notice that this is something new? I mean, Lord knows I've got the picture of my book on all of my social media stuff. So, and I went back and forth, and people said, well, just change the red outline. I said, yeah, but red's kind of my color. And then I'm thinking, what happens when I go do a couple of volumes and now I have like a rainbow of colors? I'm like, I don't know if that's not the message I want to send. I don't think people are going to be like, what is this? And then I thought, well, I'll change the suit. What if I did like a white jacket? And then I'm like, yeah, but then my logo's not going to show up. And then what am I going to do for like the 3rd and 4th one? What am I going to like just do random outfits now? So I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and do, keep the cover the same for all of them, change the wording, etc. Just try to put the volume 2 somewhere big and noticeable. But that's not really what you're asking. The content-wise, yeah, it's I'm going to stick with the same format. I love doing the sports here and the extreme sports there and the travel stuff, etc. So it's going to follow that format, where I have a couple chapters of each. So you can look forward to discussions on blackjack. We're going to do a food and wine chapter. The travel there's going to be 2 travel chapters this time. I'm going to do Paris, and I'm going to do the Bahamas, and I think it's motorcycle riding, parachuting, a couple others, but you get the general gist. So it's going to be a lot of, again, same idea and just different fields of endeavor.
So let me ask you this, since you're going to add blackjack, you said, as a gambler, do you play it religiously at all? Do you go over to Atlantic City in your spare time?
I wouldn't say regularly, but if I am at a casino, blackjack is usually the game I'll go to. I like poker rooms if they have it, but it's not every casino that will do poker, because they don't really make much off poker. It's really more for people. But yeah, blackjack is usually my go-to. I like blackjack as something that is, I mean, there's obviously a lot of luck, but I feel like it probably has the most skill involved, and you bring knowledge, and so it's not just kind of dumb luck. So
I believe by playing by basic strategy. So
yeah.
that's my textbook rule right there. Play by basic strategy and follow that religiously, and hopefully the cards will come your way.
Exactly. And always double down on 11.
Yeah. Even if it is a soft 11,
That's true. Yep.
So anyways, so let's refresh. You and Scott have been doing these reviews on this series leading up to No Time to Die. Is there any retrospect that you would change now, since you've gotten this far in, since we just last saw you do Tomorrow Never Dies?
And we literally just recorded The World Has Done Enough. In fact, I had to clean off the stuff off the shelf in the background before we started. That's a great question. I don't know if there's any that I would change necessarily, but I do notice that the pattern, at least for me, is to be extra critical on the ones that I think everyone sort of loves, and then the ones that people pick on, I tend to defend. So I kind of feel like sometimes my full-blown opinion might come across a tiny bit lopsided, if that makes sense. Like I've had people say, like, why are you so harsh on License to Kill? I mean, there's other ones that are worse than that. Yeah, there are. But again, that's just one that I can see the cracks in it, and it's one of those where you're sitting there kind of pleading from the back seat, going, "Oh, I wish you just changed this, or I wish you did that a little bit differently, because you were so close." So yeah, so it sort of pulls a lot of my ire. as opposed to some that everyone just sort of knows are just not very good, and you kind of just don't want to pick on them too much, So, yeah, I don't know if I would change any. In fact, I actually did, before we started, I kind of went through and really, like, I scored every film before we started. So, like, I can tell you now what Casino Royale is going to get, what Quantum of Solace is going to get. I have once or twice during the course of the review changed my score, because I kind of felt like the more I thought about it, the more we talked about it, I realized maybe it's a little better than I was giving it credit for. So I go up one or two. But for the most part, I did put a lot of thought into it first, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to get through the whole series and then look back at my numbers and kind of go, wow, I didn't think that through at all. I put this one higher than that one, or vice versa. So yeah, I don't think I would change any, but I do sometimes sort of feel like, again, like, even though I did give it some thought before we started, maybe the stuff we talked about didn't really reflect that. Like, maybe there's a really good movie I like and I gave it an 8, but we spent too much time focusing on the little funny little things that we would have changed, or how this wasn't quite right. And then I sort of wondered, well, did the whole review really reflect my honest opinion? But I think with that said, I think for the most part, yeah, I'd stand by pretty much all of them.
Yeah, and I know I watch them religiously still, like almost once a month. I try to go through the series as much as possible, and you still look at it. It's like, oh, is this one going to change my opinion? Is this one going to change my opinion? And then you tell yourself, no, not really. It still has the same cracks, like you said, that were there, let's say, a few months ago in your book, for example. But
well, I'll tell you what. Let me ask you, of the reviews, which is the one? Like, is there one that you just agreed with wholeheartedly, and was there one that you just said, what are you guys talking about? You're crazy.
Well, personally, I will tell you this. I absolutely agree with you guys 100% on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Yes, we know that a lot of people in the community rave about OHMSS. But the thing is, it truly is the strongest of the series, and especially since Daniel Craig's films have dropped. It has aged perfectly in my book, I think. And of course, nice. With going up to Piz Gloria, meeting Terry Mountain, and the list goes on for you. It really does. Oh, and even hitting Portugal up.
Yeah.
It really does hit that memory. It's like, this really has aged perfectly.
Yeah. It really has. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then, honestly, the one that I could probably least disagree with you guys, that's hard to say. Like,
don't be polite. Don't be shy.
No, and I'm not going to be. Well, before we started talking today, while we're recording this, it would have to be License to Kill.
Mm-hmm.
I love the darker edge that Timothy Dalton brings to it. But I also like The Living Daylights. But it's a shame that Tim did not get a third film, which I think would have changed how people look at that License to Kill.
Yeah, true.
And yes, License was dark. But at the time, it's one of those films. Yeah, it isn't liked by a lot of people, and you can see where it's not liked by a lot of people. But
yeah, very true.
I think if he did one more film, it would change a lot of people's opinion. And I know it has some weak points to it, and I absolutely agree with it. I do not honestly like the fact that they I'm trying to think, the actor that played what's his name, that head blew up.
Oh yeah, Anthony Zerbe.
Yes, thank you. Milton Crest. I did not actually particularly like that part because I was like, honestly, that's a little cheesy right there.
Mm.
Why would they throw somebody in there? Why couldn't they have just fed him to like the sharks like they did Felix?
Mm.
But there's a lot more that I see to that film that there, like I said, there is cracks to it. I agree with you 100%. So, but like I said, if Tim did one more, I think it would have changed a lot of people's opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Actually, I think he really got robbed by not getting a third one, because the third one, most of the actors, the third one is when they really hit their stride, and everybody has sort of a sophomore effort. The second one, a lot of times is fine, but doesn't quite live up to the promise of the first one. And the third one, usually they kind of come back and hit a grand slam. I think I agree with you. I think Timothy would have had that.
Oh, and same with George. He didn't get the same reception when On Her Majesty's Secret Service dropped. If he did probably one or two more films instead of escaping when he did because of Easy Rider and all that stuff, he probably would have gone down as one of the best, probably in some eyes.
I agree that he was very, I love George's performance. I love the fact that the emotionality of that film is not tainted by what we already know of this actor. Meaning, like, if Connery had done this, I don't know if I would have been very convinced that he would have been so emotionally vulnerable, etc. So yeah, and I think he could have gone on to do good things as well.
No, and when people say, and this is where I'm going to agree with you as well, when people say, "Oh, Yul Brynner as Blofeld," no,
you don't think so?
No, I think Telly did fantastic.
Yeah,
Telly was hands-on. He was doing skiing. He was doing everything you could, and especially how Blofeld was by Fleming's portrayal.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. I think Telly is wildly underrated, and a lot of people will say that he was too thuggish. And I think that's only because you know him from other things. I kind of feel like his portrayal, if you didn't know him, I feel like his portrayal here was spot on. Like you said, Fleming's Blofeld was very capable. He was athletic. So yeah, I think he kind of nails it. I think he's the best Blofeld. I think
absolutely.
Blofeld
I
is like
agree
one
with
of
you on
those.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they never quite got Blofeld perfectly. And I always feel like my favorite portrayals of Blofeld are when he's behind the screen and stroking the cat, because you have that mystery there. Once he kind of comes out from behind the curtain, it's hard to sort of live up to the hype that they built by keeping him so hidden. But I think Telly's probably the best of the bunch.
And let me ask you this. Do you think it is a continuity issue, the reason why we don't see Telly's Blofeld with a scar? Since we saw him with a scar in You Only Live Twice?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a funny question because there are so many continuity issues. That is that a continuity? Would it have been helped continuity wise? I don't know, because again, see, there's a bigger continuity problem in that the book You Only Live On Your Majesty's Secret Service comes before You Only Live Twice. So that's why everyone says, well, how come he doesn't recognize James Bond? How come they don't recognize each other? Well, because they're following the book. In the book, this was literally the first time they met. So I think if you gave him the scar, then it almost would have been a little too. I guess Bond knows Blofeld in this, and Blofeld is the one who is supposed to be doesn't know who Bond is because he's wearing glasses and doing a fake accent. So yeah, I guess the bottom line is there's probably a bigger continuity problem, and I don't know if the scar would have helped much, and it might have even cheesed it up a little bit, because again, the way he's. And You Only Live Twice, it's so kind of comic book cartoony-ish that they have this kind of big, little scar. I don't know if you remember this, and I can't remember which video game this was. It might have been Legends, the 007 Legends, where they do You Only Live Twice, or they do On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the Blofeld looks kind of more of an amalgam of different Blofelds, and it's kind of like Telly and Donald Pleasance combined. So he actually looks like Telly, but he does have the big scar. So that's kind of an insight as to what you possibly could have had if you did.
Yeah,
that.
and I never played Legends. I'll be honest with you. I never played it because the last one I played was GoldenEye Reloaded.
I think same here.
The
actually.
remake. But the thing is, I think Calvin did a review of GoldenEye Reloaded before he's done this little segment with David and getting ready to wrap it up. But I think he did a little bit of a review, but I know I saw little snippets of it on YouTube, back to YouTube source, and seeing, oh wait, did they really just give the Blofeld character a scar on Her Majesty's Secret Service mission? That's a little weird. So, but
I kind of like, one of the things the video games can do and can get away with, which I think is a positive, is they can sort of mess around in sort of the realities of Bond world and kind of do a lot of like what ifs, and I think with that in mind, I thought it was kind of clever that they gave him the scar. But my take on it is, a video game is a place where you can be a little less serious and kind of play around a little more. Like the movies, I like it when they keep both feet on the ground and they keep things improbable but not impossible. Video games, I think, have a little more leeway. So
yeah, and they do, and especially back then, everybody was wanting to play them and at least try to replicate what Bond could do. And I think that's what a problem today is. We don't have the Bond games anymore. It's straight Call of Duty or some other random shooting game. And, I think if kids still had a Bond game, I think it would really help produce numbers and so
I think
well,
we have to rely on Billie Eilish now to bring in the young people. So
don't get me started on that one. But who knows, this might be the darkest Bond film leading up to or License to Kill again. So speaking of No Time to Die, are you gonna drop any spoilers on what you truly think, or you gonna wait until that second trailer drops and then do another reaction video, or do you think what you've said so far is how you truly feel?
Well, meaning like, could I change my tune with the next trailer? Yeah, very possibly. You obviously don't know until you get there. But yeah, I mean, as you know, I did after the Super Bowl one dropped, I did a reaction video for that and kind of theorized about where they're headed with that. And I do kind of get nervous doing spoilery talk. Although again, I don't know anything, but I'm just sort of spitballing really. But yeah, I mean, that is kind of where my head is I do think, unless they're doing like a massive bait and switch, which is very possible. The reality is that, Eon tends to see what other franchises are doing, and they kind of go, look what's popular. Let's do a little of that. And one of the things that popped into my mind was, if you remember like the Avengers Infinity War commercial, and they had a shot with everybody sort of running into battle, and there was the Hulk, Then you got to the movie, and the Hulk is nowhere to be seen in that battle. Yeah. So it was obviously a little misdirect. So there's a good possibility that they are mastering the art of redirection in this, because the Dr. No references and now are just so obvious that I kind of feel like either they're very much like, I like that they're not trying to pull, oh no, she's not Moneypenny. Oh no, he's not Blofeld. Like they're just gonna let it be. Like, not try to make it a big weird surprise. Go ahead.
Well, I think honestly, I'll be on. Well, going back to Skyfall, since you dropped Moneypenny's reveal, yeah, that one. I was actually shocked by that one. Same with Rafe taking over as M. That was the one that shocked me the most, and especially at first I kind of thought that's where it was going, and especially when we saw them after MI6 got blown up. But at the same time, I was like, there was that news leak that, Judi Dench's vision is going bad, if I remember correctly, in the news. So I was like, okay, maybe they will do something to either kill her off, or she's going to just retire at the end of the film and then appoint Gareth Mallory as him. But the Moneypenny situation just blew me out of the water. I was like, we're not going to have another Moneypenny for a while. And then the Blofeld situation, we all know that was the most cheesiest. And I've read the leak script.
Yeah.
I know, I can't remember which revision it was. I think, but he wasn't revealed as Blofeld, if I remember correctly, in it. They were playing poker at a dinner table, and but he was still standing behind the bulletproof glass, though.
Okay.
Inside MI6.
Yeah, see, I remember, I remember seeing the leaked script, and I remember liking much better the Blofeld reveal, because the way they did it originally was that Bond actually exposed him as Blofeld. It wasn't that this guy who he knew his entire life with this real name changed his name, and Bond just goes, okay, I'll be polite and use your real name now from now on. You know what I mean? Like, his real name was Blofeld, not Oberhauser.
Okay, there we go. Yes, thank you. That's the one that I've read.
And that was so much more logical. Like, I mean, honestly, it was so, like, why would James Bond now all of a sudden start calling him Blofeld if that's not his name? It was so silly.
But I will say this. I do like the fact that we did get to see the origin of how he gets his scar in nowadays, we should say, how Madeline threw the watch and, of course, his eye blew out. That was the one thing I did like about Spectre, I will say. Seeing how he got the scar.
Yeah. See, yeah, and that's possibly also why I'm kind of leaning towards this idea that this whole Craig tenure is sort of a prequel to the actual franchise itself. That all of this is kind of a big long origin story. It has sort of Bond's origin, Blofeld's origin, maybe Dr. No's origin. So
yeah, and that's what we might get with Rami's character. Like, yeah, his hands look normal in this Super Bowl trailer, but if it is true, what they're saying, it's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Maybe something is gonna happen to his hands, and he's gonna have the hands. Yeah.
See, that's actually a really good argument. Yeah, you're making a good point, because, if you watch the Spectre trailer,
and then he'll be revealed as, my name is Dr. Julius No, or Dr. Safin No, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're making a good point, because throughout the Spectre trailer, you never saw Blofeld with a scar.
No, and if I remember correctly, it was just the scene of him in Rome, and the peacoat at the funeral scene, with his face looking like that, and then of course him at the Spectre meeting.
Right. Yeah.
But I also had this little fan theory, and we all have fan theories about this series. What if, you've interviewed Bridget Millar. What if Dr. Vogel is Madeline's mother. Because there's a dark-haired woman sitting by Mr. White in Quantum. There's a dark-haired woman in the picture, Inspector, by Mr. White and Madeline. I started wondering, I wonder if that secret is really Dr. Vogel is Madeline's mother, and of course Madeline somehow tied in with Spectre.
Now that's an interesting idea. I will confess, you're giving me kind of I'm reminded of Austin Powers with Dr. Evil and Frau Farbissina.
Oh, I know, but sorry, I have to. Hey, we all know that it would be nice to have Palmyra and Golden Grotto sharks.
Right. There you go. That's a great point. And I actually have wondered if possibly, I wonder if they're going to go back and basically say that Mr. White all along had been a Spectre agent under duress. Like, I think if you watch the series so far, it seems like he's just very active, member of the secret society. And then by Spectre, they kind of imply that, Spectre was getting too carried away and he'd had enough and he wasn't going to go through with it. They might actually sort of retcon a little bit and say that he has all along been a Spectre member under duress and basically had done it because he was sort of bargaining for Madeline's life in some way. Because I am getting a vibe like, I think the scene with Safin and the girl underwater, I've kind of decided, okay, I think that's Madeline. And I think that, when you first saw that teaser, you got the impression that whoever was under the water was somebody he was actually trying to kill. And, if he fired, it would have been to murder somebody. Now I'm looking at that scene differently, saying maybe he's firing to release somebody from the ice and rescue somebody. And maybe now, someone has made a deal with the devil that he has spared her life or he will keep her. And if you want to see her alive again, you will do what I tell you. And that's why Mr. White does what he does. So, yeah, that's she could be his mother, or she could also just be there to keep him in line. So, Yeah,
so there's a lot of course, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Especially since we got the rights back to Spectre. So what happened to Quantum? Whatever happened to Guy Haynes? The list goes on. So leading up to my next question, and then we'll do a few rapid fire questions to end this little interview.
Cool.
What direction would you want to see them? Well, what direction would you want to see Eon go after Daniel's departure?
That's, I keep going back and forth on that. I think depending on when you ask me, my answer would be different. There are moments, I kind of feel like probably right after Spectre, I was probably ready. I remember suffering a little Spectre fatigue, a little Craig fatigue after Spectre, and kind of feeling like they're really sucking the fun out of these movies, and they keep seeming to paint themselves into corners. So there was a part of me that was saying, you know what? Let's just break free. Let's start fresh with a different actor. Let's recast everyone. Possibly someone like Henry Cavill, who I think would be great in more of a lighthearted franchise, and possibly even going back and doing period films, because period stuff right now is getting so popular. We're having kind of a surgence of 80s movies lately. Stranger Things, the new Wonder Woman is going to be. There's a lot of 80s nostalgia happening. And there was some 60s nostalgia for a while too. Shows like Mad Men. There was that great movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, Catch Me If You Can. Yeah, great movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And I kind of feel like I think the reason why you're seeing such a trend of films being set in earlier time frames is because we're kind of getting into a world where everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody can be tracked on the GPS. I mean, there's kind of no secrets anymore, so, how do you keep the excitement and the originality going when you're a detective or something trying to hatch, trying to break open some scheme? And it's kind of like these days, it's probably so easy with technology. It's hard to hide anything. And I think Spectre is sort of proving that. So yeah, possibly a departure back into the 60s would be one way to go. On the other hand, I've argued with, not argued, but discussed with people, like, do you think they could even, at this stage of the game, could you just recast Daniel Craig and keep going forward? I don't know the answer to that, really. On one hand, I suppose you could just don't talk about it. Don't shine the spotlight on it. Just recast with somebody else, because it took us this long to get Moneypenny, to get Q, to get M, a new M, and M's office even. So do we really want to restart the whole thing from scratch again, or could we just go forward with what we've got? I don't know how easy it's going to be to just airlift Daniel Craig out of that, put someone else in, and kind of ignore the things that have happened before, because they've invested a lot of effort into making this a character arc for James Bond.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think just personally, let's just recast Daniel, and I would love to see Henry. I think Henry would be an awesome James Bond, and then of course, speaking of M, Ralph Fiennes is done. Well, this will be his third, or I think he's done fantastic. I think he is definitely a mirror image of Bernard Lee. And then, of course, it's taken so long to get Moneypenny, Q, with Ben and Naomi. But the thing is, and like you were saying also, M's office changed. Well, in my eyes, I saw it. We've all seen it. M's office changed so much since Casino Royale. We got the look of Pierce Brosnan's old office from
Die Another Day?
Die Another Day, leading up to Casino Royale. And then it changed in Quantum with a more future look. And then when Skyfall dropped, of course, we see her sitting in front of the windows. And then, of course, Underground. And then at the end, we get Rafe being revealed as M. And then it's the old office with the leather door shutting behind. It's like, it just needs simple recasting. Like, just recast Bond, leave Rafe, Naomi, Ben, and leave it from there.
Yeah. I honestly, there are so many, when you look at Die Another Day to Casino Royale, a lot of people went like, wait a second, if this is all brand new, why is Judi Dench here? And the answer is really nothing more, nothing less. Well, she's just a really great actress. We just like her in this part. So, you could just let's just close our eyes and make the best of it. Again, take Craig out, put someone else in there, and go forward. Again, but I really have to wonder, like, have they painted themselves into a corner where they've taken him on this emotional journey, and now we're just going to pretend none of it really happened. We're going to start fresh. So one part of me says, no, they can't do it. And the other part of me is like, yeah, why the hell not? Let's just do it. And if people complain, they complain, but let's give them a good movie so they won't complain. It really depends on how this film goes, by the way, because I think No Time to Die, to me, is shaping up to be a very emotional story. I get the feeling this is going to be almost to see how far they can push Bond, to see if he just cracks,
Yeah, and I agree. Sorry for
good.
Anything. No, I absolutely agree. I think that shot that was showing, the last two shots we saw that were Rafa leaning over his desk, and then we see a painting of Judi Dench's M. I'm wondering if MI6 is still compromised from Spectre.
Mm.
And there's no way they can get out of it. And someone, I think of course, we all had the rumor again. Oh, it's another On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Madeline's going to probably die. I think it could be potentially somebody inside MI6 again that dies that's super close to him.
Yes, I would not. I think that's
Or
probably a pretty safe bet.
There's going to be a lot of people that are super close to him are going to die, and he's just going to have one huge meltdown. And
I think you're warm. I'm kind of with you on that. Yeah.
So let's jump into those rapid fire questions, if you don't mind, Joe.
Bring it on.
All right. One location you'd love to own one of these days.
Oh, that's an easy one. Palmyra.
With golden grotto sharks?
Yeah. Is there any other way?
Hey, you called me out on that one day. So favorite Fleming short story?
Oh, that's a good one. Probably For Your Eyes Only. I like that one a lot. It's pretty simple, but it's got good action, and I love the locations. It takes place in Paris, and because of that short story, I go to Fouquet's anytime I'm in Paris, and I order an Americano. So I'd probably say that one.
Favorite location you've been to?
Ooh, favorite location I've been to. That's a tough one. I guess it would probably be, well, the hotel in Portugal is great. It's tough because, you know, the classic locations, I mean, obviously they sort of decay over time. They get old, and some of them literally will weather away to nothing. So it's great when you can go to a classic location and they've pretty much stayed intact. The hotel in Portugal is one. Piz Gloria is obviously one. I think if I had to pick one, it would be the Ocean Club from Casino Royale in the Bahamas. I felt like walking into that place for the first time, you just felt like you just stepped into that movie. I mean, it is so oddly authentic to what you see on screen.
Yeah, and I have a friend that lives on the East Coast as well, and he goes to the Bahamas quite often, and I tell him, you know, that's always been on my list, going over to the Bahamas, seeing the Ocean Club, seeing Rock Point. The list goes on because, of course, Casino. Thunderball was my first Bond film that I saw.
Nice.
But, you know, it's like the locations there just stand alone. Like, Casino was filmed beautifully. And of course, 1964, 67, right?
Thunderball,
yeah. That was shot beautifully at the time, and especially the underwater sequences. So it's like, it's one of those you got to get off your list. Well, and you can't consider, you know, never say never again. But
but they're worth checking out.
Yeah. Let's see. One Q branch gadget that you'd want to own.
I probably shouldn't fess up to this one, but I'd probably take the X-ray specs from The World Is Not Enough.
I'm not going to tell Mary that.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, you know, I'm kind of half jokingly about that one, but maybe that is my answer, because I feel like, you know, because obviously any of the lethal weapons wouldn't really, you know, probably couldn't put them into practice unless I was in a really bad mood that day. So it could actually be that, because it probably would have just some, you know, aside from the obvious fun things you could do with that, could be very helpful in other ways.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the funny thing is, I'm not going to tell Mary once again. She might take that the wrong way. The one Bond game that you enjoyed playing the most?
That's an easy one, GoldenEye. I mean, I will say my runner-up would probably be Quantum of Solace. I thought they did a nice job with that, blending the events from Casino and Quantum together into one story. And I actually thought the multiplayer for that was probably the most fun I had since GoldenEye. I mean, GoldenEye I sort of feel like is the obvious answer that pretty much everyone will say, because it was a stellar game. And I played that one for hours with my brothers and my cousins, and we always had a great time with that. So yeah, my runner-up would be Quantum. It was probably one of the only times I can recall, kind of, for a while, whenever I had a little free time, I'd sit around and play it for a while, So it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and they did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, and I will have to agree with you on both, just because, GoldenEye was that revolutionary game of 1997, and it broke records, and it was one of those that you'd sit around the screen with friends, family, and just go all out. Yeah. And then, of course, Quantum, of course, it blended both of the movies. Yeah. And we got the Unanswered of Guy Haynes, which I keep on talking personally about, like, why can't we still have that leak scene? Because I want to see it so bad. Just because I want to know what really happened, because I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah, and it had to have been shot. I think they shot that scene because when they made the game, I'm pretty sure had they not actually filmed it, they would have had nothing to go by.
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
This wasn't just something that was an earlier draft of the script. Like, they actually shot that. So it's somewhere.
Top 3 influencers in the Bond community.
Wow, is that a good question? Well, there's this guy. He does this channel, the Bond Experience or something like that. His name is David something. I mean, he's all right. I mean, he's fine.
He's not the greatest, but I think we've all seen him do it quite a few times now, and especially you tagging his ass and.
Yes, I mean, he's great. He does great stuff. Obviously, I'm kidding around. That's a hard one because I mean, there's so many really good ones now. Calvin, obviously, have been a fan of for many years. From Tailors with Love both of them. Peter Brooker's great. Matt Spazer's great. I mean, that's sort of a world. There's a lot of guys who are really into the clothing of Bond. And it's one of those that, I like it, but I don't like it as much as these guys do. And I haven't, obviously I don't, I'm not always dressing as well as I should. And I tend to be a little casual. And they have really made it very interesting for me. Like they have such a great dynamic together that, I love listening to their podcast, regardless of, if this is something that's kind of for me. And Peter Brooker his videos are funny. Like he has a very dry sense of humor, and he has one of those styles where I don't think it's not just accidentally funny. Like, I think he puts a lot of thought and effort into making it seem like this was totally random. Like, his videos are really, really well done. Like, he's very clever. So he's a really good guy. You really like him. Bond Armory is great. Dressing Like Bond, great. I mean, I just love all these guys. So I'm trying to think. Dutch Bond Fans, another one's really good. There's so many. You asked me for my top few. I guess that would probably cover it. But
it's all good.
Yeah. But everybody's really doing good stuff. I mean, I love catching up with everybody on my YouTube time, sitting here flipping the channels, whatever.
I hear you on that. The last one would be the one Bond car you'd want to own in your garage.
That would probably be the Aston Martin from The Living Daylights, which I think is kind of cool that it's coming back for the new film. That was always one that I thought was sort of like, and I think that's it's not the same, but it's very similar to the one in On Her Majesty's. So I kind of thought that was a really cool car, and I felt like a DB5, like if somebody said to me literally, like, you have all the money you want to spend on a car. I kind of feel like the DB5 would sort of be the one that was so quintessential that it'd be hard not to get that one first. But I really think the one from Daylights would be the one that I could easily see myself in, as an everyday, especially the fact that it's a convertible.
Absolutely.
Or they can, switch back and forth.
Yeah.
That's like when I see Brosnan pulling into the safe house and the S is a convertible. Oh, that's cool. Like I would love that right there.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, the DB5 is such a cliche answer. And I honestly hate when people say, "Oh, the DB5, DB5, DB5." And it's like, and I was like one of those persons when I saw it get blown up in Skyfall. I was like, please be the end of it, finally. And then, of course, Inspector. Oh, that old thing. It's going to take a little time. We only had a steering wheel to work with.
I mean, at that point,
I was like,
just buy another car.
You see the Aston that's the DB9 or whatever Aston Martin that was just over there in the corner. Just give him that. That was the same exact one that was in Casino, please. Yeah. Or give him the new one, of course, that they released, the DB10.
Yeah,
so.
I think it was a clever idea that they sort of made the DB5 his personal car. Like when they did that in GoldenEye, I thought, no, that's pretty clever. I like that idea. But yeah, boy, did they just like slapped you across the face with the DB5 like this. I'm not, a lot of people will cry foul at what they call fan service, when they see familiar things. Oh, that's fan service. I like fan service. I'm a fan, so I don't mind that per se. But yeah, they really ground the DB5 and they drove it into the ground. I like the fact that it's actually going to get some full blown action in this film coming up. So with that in mind, I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, there's and it is kind of a nostalgia fest. They're gonna have that DB5 from an old movie. They're gonna have the Living Daylights Aston Martin from an old movie. Is it too much? I guess. I mean, I kind of feel like that's a whole separate discussion about product placement, which has kind of gotten to, I didn't mind it at first, and if I don't notice it, but now I can't not notice it. So, but anyway.
Yeah, and again, how I feel about it, we see it, of course, getting shot up in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I'm hoping it's really the end of it, and especially the fact that we've seen the one from the Living Daylights now being revealed as well.
Mm.
We now know he does have multiple than one personal Aston Martins in his garage.
Yeah.
So
possibly multiple garages around the globe.
Oh, absolutely. We never know. He must be on the lam somewhere.
Yeah, I think if Skyfall / Spectre taught us anything, it's that anything shy of dropping the DB5 into the car crusher from Goldfinger, anything shy of that, they can still bring the car back. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Joe, thank you very much for taking your time today. I know you were running a little behind, which again, you don't need to feel bad about, but thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Anytime, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show, and I wish you the best of luck and welcome to the club.
Well, thank you very much. And for anybody that wants to check out Joe's book, Being James Bond, where can they buy it at?
You can always get it off Amazon, but if you get it off lulu.com, which is LULU.com, I believe you can get it for a much cheaper price. So definitely check it out there.
So Lulu, like the horrible singer that sang The Man with the Golden Gun?
Exactly.
That should have been sung by Alice Cooper instead?
Coincidence?
All right, Joe. Thank you very much. This is Brian Levesque signing off for James Bond Aficionado.